without further ado, please join me in welcoming to the stage Dr. Vladana, Babcic, and CNN's Poppy Harlow.
Hi, Chicago. I landed like 45 minutes ago. I'm here, just very glad that my plane landed, and I'm so happy to be here.
Thank you, Poppy. I was just laughing outside because I said to her, I've been planning, what am I going to say? How am I going to interview a journalist who interviews people every day? And there's no way that I'm going to be able to do it. And then I thought,
well, wine helps.
Wine helps,
Thanks
yes.
for the wine.
And I read my first question, and I'll read it to you. Your path to journalism was not a direct trajectory. Can you explain that? And then I said to her, why don't you instead tell us about your path to here today? Because I think it's a much more realistic vision of real life. So do you mind explaining how you got here today?
Sure. Should we start at 3:30 this morning in Washington, D.C.? Let's start there. And cheers. Cheers to everyone. Thank you for having me. I'm glad you had a little reception beforehand. I needed this. It's been a really long day. Okay, I'm Poppy. I'm thrilled to be here. I'm a journalist. I wasn't supposed to be a journalist. I was supposed to be a lawyer like my dad. That didn't happen. We'll get to that. So life and the juggle is real. I woke up at 3:30 this morning in Washington, D.C. I interviewed last night Jamie Dimon, the CEO of JP Morgan Chase, and Richard Trumka, who runs the biggest labor union in the country. And I spent the night, and I got up at 3:30 in the morning to try to do my hair that's now ruined, to get on a plane at 6 a.m. to go not do my show as I was supposed to, but go do a parent-teacher conference because my kid hit her friend, and she's 3 years old. So that was my morning. Made it, then rushed home, packed everyone, got in another cab to get on a delayed flight here. Then got on a train because the traffic was so bad coming here, but the blue line's not running from O'Hare.
Yeah.
So then I ran around O'Hare for a while, trying to find the cabs, got in a cab and made it.
Right. So if anybody's seen Lindsay walking around here like a nervous wreck, that's why.
That's why. But we made it on time.
But made it.
I think it's just an example of life doesn't go, there is no planned trajectory that ever works, but the chaos can be beautiful, and like the end of the day, being here and being with you and getting to talk to you and hear from you, I hope you have questions, is beautiful, but try not to get too stressed out along.
Tell us a little bit more, because I know you've spoken in many different avenues about how you were supposed to be a lawyer, you wanted to be a lawyer, yes. And you were a very driven kid, you did well in school, you did all the right things to get to that path, but it didn't work out for you. So one, how did you finally say, all right, I'm going to go in a different direction, and how did you make peace with that?
Yes. So I grew up in Minnesota, and I wanted to be a litigator, an intellectual properties litigator, just like my dad. He was my everything. He was, I am my father in so many ways. And he died when I was 15, pretty suddenly. And so here I am, this teenage girl, sort of trying to figure out who she is. And then he's gone, and so I just wanted to do everything to be like him. I went to the same college that he went to. I lived in the same dorm that he lived in. I, was trying to go to law school. I was trying to do the same kind of law as him. And I thought I was doing everything perfectly. I got straight A's. I went to Columbia University. I graduated early, and I didn't get into any of the top law schools I applied to, none of them. And I was devastated. And I thought everything was over. My career was a failure. I was a failure. But I had fallen into this internship while I was in New York. For 3 years, I worked in news at CBS News. I just fell into it. And so I was like, well, I've now graduated early. I have nothing to do. So I'm going to try this journalism thing for a little while and see how it goes. And it is the best thing that has ever happened to me to fail in what I thought I should be doing, because I got to try my hand at news, and my mom swears that she's like, you used to run around the house saying you wanted to be Katie Couric. I don't remember this, and I am not Katie Couric. She is amazing. But maybe she knew something that I didn't know. But the point is, I think there was a path for me, and it just wasn't the path that I planned, and I'm so happy that I didn't get into any of those law schools. So that's the true story. My failure was my side door.
And now you're interviewing amazing people. You have your own podcast, Boss Files, which I just saw today.
Thanks for the promo.
On the homepage of Google Podcasts. So that's a really big deal. And I know you kind of do that on the side, aside from your anchor job. So how did you kind of why did you do Boss Files? And what made you want to do that within your kind of time at CNN outside of just being an anchor?
I think that's a good question, because I think a lot of us feel like if we work for companies, and by the way, I'm remiss not to thank Banco Dental for having us and the Lucy Hobbs Project, which is amazing as I was researching what you guys have built, so thank you very much for having me. I think when you work for companies, especially big companies like CNN or even smaller, medium-sized companies, we often don't think about how we can be entrepreneurs within those companies. How can we be intrapreneurs? How can we start something that isn't our day job, right? Because we have our day job, it's so all-consuming, then we have our families, let alone finding a little bit of time for ourselves. So Boss Files is a complete passion project. I don't even think CNN really knew I was doing it for like the first year. I was on maternity leave with my first child. I have 2 kids, 1 and 3. They were super fun on the plane today. And
Drink more wine, more wine.
It was very hard. And I was on maternity leave, and my friend Leslie came over, who's about 15 years older than me, much wiser. And she was visiting my first born Sienna, and she said, I had just interviewed Warren Buffett, which was like a big get for me. And she said, why can I only hear 5 minutes of your Warren Buffett interview on CNN or online? Wasn't it an hour-long interview? And I said, yeah, but we have commercial breaks, and you can't just put an hour of it on television. She said, well, why don't you have a podcast? And I was like, a what? This is 3.5 years ago. And she's like, a podcast. And I was like, okay. So she left, and I started Googling podcasts and like CEO podcasts. So I keep a list of everything I want to do, and I write reminders to myself all over my calendar. So fast forward like 2 or 3 months later, and I walk into the head of digital's office at CNN. I was like, Ed, can I have a podcast? And he goes, sure, email this guy in Atlanta. That's where CNN was started. I was like, okay, Tyler, I'm Poppy. I want to do a podcast. I've got all these great interviews, and they're sitting on the cutting room floor. Are you into it? He's like, sure. I mean, you have to do it, do the work, you and your producer, my producer, Haley Drasnin, who's great, but we'll support it. We'll put it on the CNN platform. We'll promote it. So Haley and I took the 12 biggest interviews we'd done that year, which were huge names like Melinda Gates and Howard Schultz, the former CEO of Starbucks, and just really big names. And we worked, and we took all the audio, and we made graphics to go with it and social promotion. And we put it out there, and we didn't know if anyone was going to listen. And I don't know if anyone
Is anyone listening?
Oh, they are now.
They are now.
I don't know if they did at first. And then we thought, well, we'll just leave it for those 12. But then we realized people were reaching out to us, pitching us their executives just for the podcast. And it showed the power of a medium that's not television. So this is a project that was started in tandem with what I do for my sort of main job within a big company, but it's completely ours, and now we're 3.5 years in. So I just think that two lessons, some of your best ideas come when you're not at work. If I could tell my 25-year-old, 30-year-old self to do something differently, I would have taken more vacation time, a lot more. I take every single day now. And I would have been a little more selfish with my time, because your best ideas often come when your mind is at ease.
So I remember for a while you had told me that you were the yes girl. Someone wanted you somewhere, you were there. This interview, that interview, no matter how big or small, whether you're here at Lucy Hobbs with us lovely people or doing some amazing thing at the United Nations, you were the yes girl. Then recently,
yes.
I remember reading that you were more of the maybe or no girl, and I want to know what made you the no girl. What made you switch to that, and when did you know it was time that maybe you could get more selfish with your time?
Because I wasn't bringing my full self to the table. Every day felt like today,
Yeah.
Every day was racing from one thing to the next, and I wasn't being my best self. It was my fault. No one forced me to do it. I had mistakenly equated a full calendar with feeling fulfilled. So every hour on that Outlook calendar, do dentists use those?
Yes.
Okay.
Too.
On those Outlook calendars.
We do that too.
I had full, like, someone would ask, can you have coffee? Or I'd reach out to someone, can you have lunch? This is a good networking opportunity, or seeing a friend. Whatever it was, every hour was full. And then when I had children, I realized that I was like racing home like a mad woman, just part of the rat race, barely seeing enough of my daughter. It was just one child at the time. But for what? Like what? It was not filling my soul. It was not really helping my career. And so my husband, who's taught me so much, and I really believe what Sheryl Sandberg said about her late husband, Dave, that, if marrying the right person is the single most important career decision you can make. And I don't mean like someone who can hook you up with contacts. I mean, if you have a husband or a wife or a life partner who is not supportive of you and your trajectory, that will hold you back. Mm-hmm. If you are married to someone who is not brutally honest with you, like he has been with me about how I use my time and how I prioritize, that can really harm your career and your life. So he helped me realize, like, he has this saying, he says, pop the big bubbles, Poppy. Like, not the little ones. What are all these little ancillary things? So I really, switched to no, to most things, unless it really fulfilled me, if it was a big favor to someone that I love, or if it was a serious work obligation. And that means, no to your boss as well on things. So for me, it was, and it's not easy, but it's not, by the way, I sometimes veer back to the too many yeses, and then I have to center myself again.
Well, thanks for saying yes to this.
Well,
I know
this
that
was
we're small fish, but we're really grateful.
Anytime that I can speak with amazing women, I feel like women have done so much for me on the way up, so it was no-brainer.
That leads me to my next question. Yes. Of all the women that you've interviewed, which one made the most impact to you, and which one were you just a nervous wreck because you were so excited and couldn't believe you were going to interview them?
So three? Can it three?
Sure, three.
Three very different people. Gwyneth Paltrow, Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and Melinda Gates, for three different reasons. So I'll start with Gwyneth Paltrow. I was very nervous to interview her, and I did an hour with her on stage at South by Southwest last year. And I don't know why I was nervous, but I was very nervous. And I don't usually get nervous anymore. She started crying when I asked her about her dad and the impact that her dad had on her and her life. And her humanity really came out. And I appreciated it so much because I can only imagine growing up in the limelight as she did and being a celebrity pretty much all her life, how scary that is. So vulnerability is what she taught me. Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg speaks so carefully and slowly. Her clerks have I've heard, maybe it's urban myth, but a practice where they'll count 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3 Mississippi. She's still thinking, don't interrupt. She's still gonna say something brilliant. So she has taught me the power of deep thinking and choosing your words carefully. And I had the chance to sit with her. We should tell that story next. 5 days after I had my son, so we'll get to that. And what I learned most from Ruth Bader Ginsburg is choosing your words carefully. And her mother taught her that to win, you don't have to yell. To win, you don't have to raise your voice. If you look at the trajectory of her career and the decision, she's been the dissenter many times, which is not actually what she wanted to be, but she has always believed that progress can be slow and step by step, and you can convince people and you don't have to yell and shout. So I think that's important as women think about how do we elevate our voice. And then Melinda Gates, because Melinda Gates at 50 years old decided that she wanted to spend the rest of her life helping women and girls. And here is someone who had been in the shadow of her husband for so long, Bill Gates, who now is everywhere. She has this amazing new book, Moment of Lift. She is open about her marriage and where she had to really fight for equal in her marriage. And I think that what it shows you is that like all of your life decisions don't have to happen now. Like I'm 37 and this is the beginning. At 50, she decided, she just last week dedicated $1 billion to initiatives for women and girls. So, that you can have these inflection points all along the journey.
So back to the Ruth Bader Ginsburg story, because this is something that I know and I'd read in several articles about Poppy as well, but you, if I'm right, you had the opportunity to interview her, and you knew the date, and the date was near the date that you were supposed to deliver your second child.
Yes.
And so you were going back and forth trying to figure out, should I accept this interview, do it, should I not? And kind of what were you thinking, how did you do this, and what ended up happening?
My husband again. So I was at my college, Columbia. She went to Columbia Law School, and my university had her for this women's summit, and they asked me like 6 months in advance to interview her. And I mean, it's so hard to get an interview with a sitting Supreme Court justice. They just don't do it unless they have a book to promote, and she didn't. And it was February 12th is the date they asked for, and that was my due date. And I was like, I cannot do that. So I went back and I told them no. And then I went back to the doctor the next week. It was early in the pregnancy, and she moved the due date up to February 5th because I guess I was further along. And then Columbia actually wrote me back, and they said basically in so many words, are you actually saying no to a sitting Supreme Court justice? Like, just want to get this straight. And I had told them I was pregnant. That's why I said no. And I was like, okay, that's fair, good point. And so I went to my husband, Sinisha, and I said, I remember we were on a family vacation. I said, I mean, I know this is totally crazy and I would never do it, but I just wanted to let you know that I got asked to interview the Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg. But anyways, like, what's for dinner? I didn't want him to think I was even considering it because I thought he'd think I was a bad mom. I was sure that even he would judge me for being a bad mom, because who would ever do something when they have a 5-day-old, right? He's like, you have to do that interview. He's like, I got the kids, it's fine. Just tell them if you're in labor, they should have a backup. And I was like, okay, that's a good solution. So they had a backup. Luca was on time, came on his due date, just as my daughter did. And I was out of the hospital, and 5 days later, my husband took the kids on a walk, and I got in a cab, and I went uptown, and I did the interview, and I called him after, and I was like, is everyone alive? And he's like, we're good. We're at the wine bar down the street. And I walked in, and he had a glass of wine for me, and it was great. So having faith in your partner, they can do it, is super important. But that was a moment to say yes, right?
Right.
But it was my choice. Here's the thing, I hesitate about telling that story, and it's not even full story. I was wearing a diaper. How many people have kids?
Yeah.
Do you know what you have to wear after you have kids? Those mesh underwear with that like diaper with ice, it's real. That's what I was wearing. And I ordered a size large skirt on Rent the Runway, black, obviously, and like a large turtleneck, and just like hoped it would all fit. And that's how I interviewed a Supreme Court justice.
Yeah, but you know what? That story, like, I think is one of the most poignant stories that I know about you. And what an awesome thing, honestly, to tell your daughter one day and be like, it's okay. Like, you can be a mom, you can just have a baby, and you can interview the Supreme Court justice.
But the one thing that concerns me about it is I fear that it will be translated by many people as looking like Superwoman, and like, you have to do that. And that's not true. That was my choice at that moment in my life with my partner. But that doesn't mean that every woman could do that, nor should they feel like they have to. Mm-hmm. So you have to, see what your circumstances are, trust your gut, and say yes or say no.
That makes sense. So let's move on to we did a whole topic today while you were trying to get here somehow on healthy me and healthy teams. So I know that you are very healthy, for how busy you are. You seem to find time.
I ate M&Ms and Pringles last night after my interview, alone in my hotel room. True story.
But you do love SoulCycle.
I'm going tomorrow morning.
I'm going tomorrow morning. And so what do you do for yourself to keep you mentally healthy more than anything, as well as physically?
Exercise. For me, that's it. I really, really need it. And I'm running a half marathon in a few weeks with some friends from all over the country are coming in, and that was just to have it on my calendar to train And even finding time for it, my friend Rebecca Jarvis, who's another journalist from Minnesota, I was like, Becky, I don't have any time to do these like 7-mile runs. They take me a long time. And, just to train. And she's like, well, I think you should run home from work. Like actually run home from Midtown Manhattan to Brooklyn. So I have started actually running home from work.
No.
Like I put my stuff in an Uber, and they deliver it to the house, like right about when I'm gonna get there. My colleagues at work help me time it. And I run, my boss, the head of CNN, saw me the other day in the elevator bank, like full workout gear. He's like, where are you going? I was like, I'm gonna run home. And he goes, to Brooklyn? So I do, and I run over the Brooklyn Bridge, and I make it just in time to pick up my daughter Sienna at school at 2:55, and you can't be late because they judge you if you're late in these New York City schools. And so I really wanted to stop on the Brooklyn Bridge. I was so tired. And then I looked at my clock, and I was like, oh my God, I can't stop because I will be late. If I stop, I have to keep running to get Sienna at school. So you find the time. I do think that exercise is the first thing to go, even sometimes for me. I feel guilty leaving the kids or my husband, or I should, be sleeping and not getting up. But for me, I have to put it in my calendar as like just as important as a meeting, and it's prioritizing like me time. So I've started going to 5 a.m. Barry's boot camp classes right next to my work. It's crazy, but I get it done. So
we were asking earlier today, what time do you go to bed and what time do you wake up?
Me, I wait. Well, this morning it was 3:30. That was not fun. Usually I wake up about 4:15, and I should go to bed at 8. Sometimes I do, but I really like the show Succession. So we've been watching Succession at night. And sometimes the kids, my son this week had 105 fever for a few nights. So that was like, midnight, we were changing the sheets. And so, but usually, I believe I'm in sort of the Jeff Bezos, Amazon founder. I think it's like 8 hours of sleep, doesn't take meetings before 10 a.m. Ariana Huffington, they all think sleep's important. I think it's really important. And I think we're cheating ourselves by not taking enough. So on a good day, 8:30. And no one calls me after like 7. So 8:30, and then to sleep till like 4, And if the show is not too hard and the news cycle isn't too crazy, which is not the case right now, I'll like push it and sleep till 4:45.
Okay, so how do you have, I know that you always talk about your producers and all the people that are on your team, and we've been talking a lot about teams. So you're the one that's in the spotlight, you're the one that kind of gets the accolades for the success. So how do you keep all those people that are behind you in a way, behind the camera, everyone that's on your team, how do you keep them motivated? How do you kind of give them praise and show them that you appreciate them so that they stay motivated?
I think it's a great question because look at that. Like the producer's picture is not on their name, right? I like how 60 Minutes does it. Their producer names are on top of all of the pieces at the beginning of each one. So I think this is something I could have been better at earlier in my career, and I wish I had. You actually need to spend time with every person that works with you and for you. Really, take them to lunch, every single one. You have time. Take them to coffee, whatever it is. Bring them breakfast at their desk. And try to learn what motivates them. And then try to do as much as you can to help them achieve that goal. You can't always. I actually don't have direct reports. It's an interesting structure. That's not how it works. So I can advocate for my producers, but they don't work for me. I don't have a say on their salary. I give feedback for a review, but that's all. So that's actually hard for me because I can't just be like, you're amazing, huge raise, huge promotion, title change. But I can advocate for them. So I think actually as leaders, you're not a true leader if you don't spend time learning what drives and motivates and excites the people you work for. And you'll never actually reach your potential if they aren't motivated every single day with you, right? Because they lift us up.
Well, it's kind of interesting you say that because we talked about it from a dental perspective, and it's kind of like, I guess it transcends fields because we were really saying quite similar things. If you had been here earlier, all the dentists felt the same way that you did.
Yeah.
So it's interesting.
Yeah.
So, you have a lot of pressure on you. You're in the public eye. People are judging you everywhere you go. So how do you handle the negative criticism? the fake newsness and all the stuff that you get every day?
Okay, I would say I have less pressure than anyone in this room. I'm not doing surgery. People's mouths are not in my hands and lives, and so, it's just television. But no, it's more than that, right? It's journalism. And right now when the free press is being attacked so much, yeah, it's very important. Hearing fake news, I don't think it should be in our lexicon.
Does it bother you when people say that about CNN?
Oh, does it bother me?
Yeah.
I just think it's not true, so it bothers me because some people believe it. And I certainly think it's not a phrase the leader of the free world should utter. No, I think there are more important things. But I don't, it doesn't get under my skin. It actually drives me to want to do more and do better. How do I handle the attacks? I have very thin skin, which made it really hard for me early on in my career because I had some missteps and I said some insensitive things that I didn't mean to say, but just because of a lack of knowledge and experience and judgment. And I was mortified and devastated when, the Twitter, it's just so painful, but it has made me a better reporter. As has becoming a mother, because it has taught me an empathy I never knew before. So, I don't know, they say have a thick skin, but I also think having a thin skin can make you empathetic, and I think being empathetic in any career is one of the best things you can be. If you're an empathetic doctor, you're a better doctor. I think if you're an empathetic journalist, you're a better journalist. So, yeah, I hate the attacks on the free press. I think it's un-American, but I think we won't stop doing our job.
Yeah, that's amazing. So you... So whether you realize it or not, you're an inspiration to a lot of women, you're an inspiration to kids, people watch you, they want to be like you. So I know that you are involved with the Boys and Girls Club.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit more about what made you pick them and why is that important for you?
So I sit on the board of the Boys and Girls Club, the local chapter in New York City. We have 6 clubhouses there. We just built an amazing new clubhouse in Harlem. It was like a $40 million endeavor, and it's beautiful, and it's in this neighborhood that really, really needed it. Because if you think about, what do kids do after 2:55 p.m. in the afternoon when most parents are working, they really need a place of structure, a place that will help them build confidence. And so that's what the Boys and Girls Club does all over this country. I got involved because before kids, so 2014, I remember the day, I was walking from our apartment in Brooklyn to the subway, the A train, the blue line in New York, if you will, and I was thinking to myself, all we do, meaning my husband and I think, we were just married, kind of all we do is go to work, go to the gym, and go out to dinner. Really, with friends or cook dinner or socialize. On repeat. That's it? I didn't have children yet, and I thought, well, what am I giving back? Yes, our jobs all give back, but what am I actually giving back to the people most in need? And I'm not, a billionaire, so I can't build a wing for them at the hospital, but I have some time. And so I was at an event actually where I met someone from the Boys and Girls Club, and the Navy Yard Clubhouse is a mile from our old apartment. So, and that's one thing about New York City, and I'm not sure about Chicago. I spent a lot of time here, but New York City will have public housing, Section 8 housing, 2 blocks away from a $10 million apartment. Is it like that here? But are you friends with anyone from there? No. That's a big problem. Our schools are becoming way less diverse as neighborhoods become wealthier and gentrification pushes people out. That's a big problem. And I don't want my kids to grow up in an all-white rich school. And I realized that my friend base wasn't diverse enough and my interaction base wasn't diverse enough. So I went and I met someone at an event, and he put me in touch with the Madison Square Boys and Girls Club, and I didn't join the board right away. I went down, I started volunteering, and they said, oh, well, you speak for a living. And I was like, yeah, I guess that's what I do. I jabber at the TV for a living. They said, we have a young girl named Angel with a speech impediment, and she's up for a Youth of the Year award, and she has to give this big speech to like see if she can get it. Can you work with her? So I worked with Angel. I love her. She's about to graduate from college. I then helped her with her SATs. You know, like, not a lot. I don't do enough for her, but here and there, whatever I could do, I like, you know, called her college counselor. I made sure her applications got in on time. Like, I bought her a Metro card when she needed it. And then they asked me to join the board, and I was like, well, your board is like 60, 80-year-old white male millionaires. Like, I don't fit. And I can't give what they can give, but I can do what I can do, right? And so anyways, that's how I joined, and it's been very, very fulfilling. And you know, it's actually been a hard push and pull because it does take a lot of time. The board meetings are very far away, and it's been frankly very hard with kids, but like I join on the phone when I can't go. But I do think we all should think a little bit about like, what are we actually doing? Like, are we on this cycle that is just like really insular?
So with that, who really, I mean, aside from your family, but like who are your kind of mentors or people you looked up to as a kid or even now?
So I have two mentors, both men. And I think, you know, it's interesting because I think we often think, will women mentor women? And they do, and they should continue to. But there are also really great men out there who can and do lift women up as well. So I have two mentors. One is Larry Kramer, who started CBS MarketWatch, where I got that internship. So I owe it to Larry for taking me when I didn't get into law school. And the advice that Larry gave me was get the big interviews and get them when they matter. So get the biggest names you can, and then get them to talk to you when they're in the news, which is the hardest thing to do. Like, you can get an interview with anyone when they want to talk about something, but when they're actually in the news and it's a hard topic, you want them to come to you. That was great advice. I was 22 when he told me that. And Andrew Hayward is my mentor now. He used to be the president of CBS News when Dan Rather was there. I wrote my college thesis on the California recall election, and when Schwarzenegger was running, and the amount of focus on a celebrity running for public office. And that was a long time ago. And I interviewed him for that thesis, and then we've just stayed in touch, and he's mentored me, and he's given me the really, I think mentors need to be really brutally honest with you, and he's told me when I'm really wrong a lot. So that's the value he gives me, is he's just not scared to say, that's the wrong approach. You're going to alienate people doing it that way. So those are two people that have lifted me up a lot. And then I think my mother I'm from Minnesota, she's still there, for telling me to relax, go to sleep, and get a B or some C's and just chill out. She was wanted me to get bad grades just to relax, which is great. I mean, I can't imagine how insane I'd be if I had a parent who stressed me out, but I think there's a real value in that, in telling your children grades aren't everything, and breathe. And then my dad, just for his amazing work ethic and his heart, and he liked my day-to-day. He flew through 3 airports from a deposition in Japan to make it to my 7th birthday and flew back the next day.
Wow.
So, yeah.
So, you're obviously, you've done well, you've interviewed a lot of great people, but is there somebody you're just dying to get that you've tried but you can't?
Yes, Jeff Bezos, Amazon.
Jeff Bezos.
I just did a 90-minute documentary on Amazon, which was really fascinating to learn all about Amazon beyond just what comes to your door. And all of the power they have in our economy through Amazon Web Services, their cloud computing with contracts with the Department of Defense and the Pentagon. And I tried so hard to get an interview with Jeff Bezos.
Are you still trying?
Yes, Jeff Bezos, please do an interview with me.
In case he's watching this amazing meeting.
No, it's true. I have been able to get almost every interview that eventually.
Yeah.
So Jeff Bezos and Tim Cook, I really want to interview Apple CEO Tim Cook, because I think he's been such a remarkable leading voice on tech, on the privacy issues right now. And what I admire so much about him as a leader is that he has spoken out publicly and loudly about social issues, whether it's LGBTQ rights, et cetera, for a long time, and like really taken a stand before a lot of big company CEOs did. So I'm working on it.
Working on it.
Working on it.
Kind of coming to the end, and then if you guys have any questions, feel free. She's open to answer.
Please have questions. Don't make me have that awkward moment when no one raises their hand. That's happened to me before.
We're all in the dental field. We're passionate about dentistry. We think teeth are so important. So I'd like to know when you had your last cleaning.
I love that. That's such a great question. I got my last cleaning with Dr. Bartolazzo like 4 months ago. I'm very good at it. You should ask my husband. He needs them more. He doesn't like to go to the dentist. And now I take my children. It's like torture zone.
Oh, yeah.
They make me hold their hand. They lay on me, and I have to hold their hands down, and my children scream. Is there any way to improve this situation? It's a, you know one?
Dentist, yeah.
Okay, good. Tell me, because I need it. Tell me, I need it. So yes, I take care of
You do.
I never had braces.
Ooh.
I feel very special. Yes.
So let's open it up. If anybody has any questions or you guys want to ask her something. Oh, there.
Are you going to share a beauty tip?
And tell me your name, maybe, and who you are, where you're from.
It's on. Do I need to? Oh, this.
Yep.
I'm Ann Duffy from Charlotte, North Carolina, and I want to say thank you to Benko for inviting me. I'm so honored to be here at this event and to realize the great work you're doing with women, not only in dentistry but in the world. And a beauty tip would be, well, I just came back from the dermatologist, and I have a little precancer here. I'm getting a chemotherapy cream that it's going to go away, but I'm like, oh, shoot. Go to your dermatologist. That's my tip.
My mom just had that.
Really?
Yeah, her 4th time getting some precancerous thing removed.
Well, yeah, I've had this thing burned like 3 times, and I'm like, this is still, and she goes, yeah, I'm like, oh, gosh.
Yeah.
But anyway, it's nice that it's going to go away.
Yes.
And I'm thankful that it's going to get taken care of. So that's my tip. Poppy, it's such a pleasure to see you in person. Thank you. And I love your sister. And I love Dr. What's your last?
Babcic.
Babcic, for bringing you here.
Thanks. I'm thrilled to be here.
Thank you. My question to you is that I actually started a magazine for women in dentistry.
Oh, great.
Yeah, and it started to be about highlighting women. Then it was inspiring women, and turned into be empowering women, and then now it's connecting all women in dentistry, which we're on the same path, aren't we, girls? Ladies. My question to you is, how do we empower women when they don't know how to be empowered and if they want to be empowered? Because that's what I'm finding. When you mentioned the people that you want to interview, they're men. And so how do we empower women to get to to that echelon?
Yeah, well, because all the other women have been nice enough to say yes. If that's my alarm, turn it off. I don't know what it would be, but it might be mine. I think it's a great question. Because I actually struggled a lot with my femininity and being empowered. And you can be both. And you can make good money and still make dinner and still be domestic and do those things that no one told me. I love it. My husband tells me to order dinner every night. I grew up in Minnesota with a home-cooked meal from a mom who has her PhD in psychology. Like, I want to do that for my kids when I can, so I have found a way to feel feminine and feel, I like doing domestic things, and that empowers me, actually. If I can, deal with some school stuff like I did with my meeting this morning, I feel empowered. But I do think it's a delicate balance, because I do think that society can judge successful women in a negative way. It's just so unfortunate. And I think that some men don't want those women, right? Which goes back to my point about who are you like spending your life with, right? Warren Buffett's one of the many great things he said is that he surrounds himself with people, everyone he surrounds himself with are better than him, because you become who you surround yourself with. So I think it is about who is around you, what are they comfortable with, and then realizing that you can be a chameleon in a way, and I don't mean changing your colors and being disingenuous, but I mean I can be one thing in an interview with a senator who is not answering my question, and sir, would you just please answer my question, tough, and then I can go home and be softer, and that's okay. So I don't know, I'm not totally there. I'm, closer to 40 than anything else, and I'm not totally there, but I do think that we can have different sides and that has to be okay. But I also think it's about women being genuine with each other. Like, when you go out to drinks with your girlfriends, are you just talking about your successes? Or are you talking about where you failed? Are you talking about where you're vulnerable? And by the way, are you sharing your salaries with each other? Because I would highly recommend that. Because you will never get paid what you're worth if you don't tell each other what you make. Men do it. Fight for what you're worth. Some of my best friends in the business have done that to me, and it makes a world of difference. And I think women, need to talk about their failures, be vulnerable with one another, and then help empower the other by telling them where they've succeeded, how they've negotiated, and what they make, so that you can go fight for the same.
Great.
I think I saw a question back there. Oh, yes.
My name is Sharon. I work with Benco.
Hi,
We've
Sharon.
had a theme
Thank you for
today
having us. Yes.
that we share beauty tips. So I want to know what your number one beauty tip is.
What is my beauty tip?
Number one beauty
We've
tip.
all answered that.
Fake eyelashes.
That was mine too.
But they're the permanent. They're the 2-week ones. They're not the strips. I used to do that, and then I would take them off and put them on the coffee table. And my husband finally said, "Can you please stop doing that? They look like spiders." So I go. It's an indulgence because it's an hour of my time every 3 weeks. And I go to this place on 14th Street, and I listen to podcasts, and they spend an hour putting the lashes on, and it's a total indulgence, and I love it.
So I just started with the magnetic liner.
Oh, I don't know about this.
Oh, it's amazing.
Okay. Gotta Google that.
Yeah.
Amazon that.
Ulta.
Okay.
And magnetic eyeliner. It
Okay.
has magnetic properties, and the eyelashes stick to it.
Okay. Oh,
Wonderful.
brilliant.
Question over here? Yeah.
My question is, have you ever encountered someone who was super difficult to interview, just wasn't feeling it, pulling teeth, no pun intended.
Daily.
And how do you overcome that? How do you overcome someone with a difficult personality?
Okay, it's such a good question. Yes. So on live TV, when you're asking a lawmaker a question they don't want to answer, it can get super uncomfortable. Some of the best, and then also just in a sit-down hour-long podcast interview I'm doing, someone might be nervous, or you don't know what happened in their day before they came to you, right? Might not be on their game. So 2 answers. In the live sort of format with someone, some of the best advice I ever received, I just got about 6 months ago. And I was told, you can ask anything with a smile. And it's true. Senator, you're not really answering my question, right? You don't have, RBG, you don't have to yell at people. And I used to yell, and it was so ineffective because it was disingenuous to who I am. Really, as a woman, and women yell. I yell. But I'm just saying it wasn't I felt like I was sort of doing it to look tough on TV. I can't believe I'm saying all this. But it's true. I've learned a lot, and I hope other women learn it too from that. And then in a longer format interview, that's where empathy comes in. Like, you know what the great equalizer is for everyone? And I say this knowing not everyone has kids, needs to have kids, or wants to have kids. And I think this country, by the way, we don't respect enough those choices. And I think that's important as well. Like, why do we always ask women in their 30s, like, when are you having children? Like, it's none of your business. But I do think that children, whether it's your nieces, your nephews, your grandkids, your best friend's kids, your kids, are the great equalizer. So instead of just jumping into a conversation with someone or an interview about whatever topic, I often just start by asking, like, how are your kids? What are they doing? What did they do this summer? Where are you guys going on vacation? And you find that people's guard lets down, and I love talking about my kids, so even the good, the bad, the ugly. And so I think that if you can just be more human with someone, because I'm more than just the person interviewing you, and you're more than just the CEO answering my questions. Like, who actually are you? And what makes you smile, and what makes you happy, and what scares you, and what makes you nervous? Those are just the more human questions to ask. And so if you get someone to understand you person to person, it's going to be a lot more effective conversation. These are great questions,
again, guys.
by the way.
Hi.
Hi.
I'm Priyanka. I'm a
meet you.
dentist in Chicago. My question actually kind of ties in some of the things that you just brought up along with the team theme of the day. Along with empathy, along with the not yelling, what other techniques do you use? Because as you mentioned earlier that, yes, you're not the one directly paying your team and all of that, but you are involved in the review. What do you do to motivate your team when you know someone's having a bad day? We've talked about this earlier. And what are some techniques that you use that have worked for you that have impacted how to bring up the morale for that day, for that important interview, whatever that may be, so that everyone can come together? Because as we all know, teamwork makes the dream work. So, how do you handle that?
I think spending the time to find out about them. Like, we have this position in our company called a PA, a production assistant. And what they do with us on our show is they print out our scripts and they run them up to set in all the commercial breaks. And then, when news breaks, like an urgent email goes out and they'll print that up so we can see it and tell you guys what's going on. But that can't be that fulfilling, right? But I did that that was how I started my career, and I started literally running across the street to get beta tapes, like when we had VHS tapes from the library, and ingesting them and transcribing them. But it was the people that took an interest in me beyond that really made a difference. So one of the girls we have, her name is Lauren. She's brilliant. She's getting her master's right now. So I started asking her to do more editorial work. Hey, I asked her the other day, can you find out for me why did the assault rifle ban, the assault weapons ban, why did that lapse 10 years ago? I don't get it. Why did it lapse, and why didn't the Senate and why didn't Congress, re-up it? And she did brilliant research. But I don't know how many people had asked her before to do that because they just saw her in that job. So try to see people for a little bit more than the job they do. I have not always been good at this. I would say for the first decade of my life at CNN, I was solely focused on the end goal and what I was doing and what I was getting. But now Lauren and I go to hot yoga together, And I've learned so much more about her life. We have this amazing girl, Rebecca, who I think will run CNN one day, and she's a PA. And so I took her to coffee the other day. I had 20 minutes. But I knew it would mean a lot to her to just hear from her about what she wanted to do and how could I help her get there, and could I push for her to come to the next debate with us, right? To see what it's like to be in the field. So I'm not perfect by any measure, but when I have the time and I try to see people for a little bit beyond the job they're doing, and assume the best. Give people the chance to succeed, and if they fail, okay, maybe they're not up to the task at that point, but why not let them try? That's it.
Okay, I have two questions.
What's your name?
First question, Kate.
Hi, Kate.
I work with Vladana.
Great. It's my
Who is your favorite SoulCycle instructor in New York? Number one.
This is so bad, I don't even know. I just go to the class that the time works.
Okay.
But the CEO, Melanie Whelan, who I've had on Boss Files, you guys should
great.
listen.
Love her.
Super inspirational.
Totally.
Yes. But I do Peloton a lot now at home too, when I can't get out of the house.
Wait, I have one other.
Look,
So
one of the few men in the room was like this in the back. What? Oh yeah, and Allie Love and
Allie Love's great.
love Alex Toussaint. It's a lot of
No, but my real question is, what in your career, what has been the single happiest day and the single hardest day?
the single happiest day in my career. I don't know. Interviewing Ruth Bader Ginsburg was pretty great. I was super freaked for that interview. Like, I cannot tell you how much I over-prepared for that interview. I should like frame my interview notes. That I worked so hard on that interview and was so nervous with the baby and all that. So I think that was a very happy day in knowing that I could succeed in doing it with like baby brain, which is a real thing. After you have a child, you don't even like know which left from right. Sometimes it was hard, no sleep. That was a good day. I think the most consequential days for me have been when I have had to sit in the home of a grieving parent who has lost their child. And for some reason, they're talking to me and opening up and telling me, whether it was after Sandy Hook, whether it was, I went to Paris after the Bataclan terrorist attack. I was 5.5 months pregnant. And I was in the air flying from LA back to New York. And they emailed me and said, basically, don't leave JFK. Go from JFK to Paris. You're going to cover, this terror attack just happened. And my husband repacked my bag, packed a bag, brought it. We switched bags at the curbside. And I went, and it was so important for me to be there. And it was not my happiest day, but I'm saying the most consequential. In the days that followed, I spent time in the homes of Parisians, a mother who lost her son, this beautiful young man who was a florist. And the roses that he sent his fiance were sitting there in our interview because that's how fresh it was. And the fact that they invited us into their home to tell that story, there's nothing, right? I mean, as a parent, I can imagine losing a child. So to me, those are not the happiest moments, but the most consequential and meaningful moments. All of this political bickering aside, those are the stories that we need to tell and need to share and need to honor those lives. And so I think that would also answer your question about the hardest. What do you ask a parent that's lost their child? What do you ask someone who has survived something horrific, right? And you always feel like you're not really doing it justice. And those are the moments when the empathy is so important and just less of me, less of us talking, more of them.
Hi, I'm Charmaine Ng, and I'm a dentist. And obviously this event is about empowering women. And I would like to know, what are some of your tips and advice for succeeding in what traditionally is, in your profession and also in our profession, a male-dominated field? How can women really kind of stand out and be at the same table as men and be recognized equally?
Have you ever heard the phrase, if you want something done, ask a busy mother or ask a busy woman? It's for real. I think we are remarkable multitaskers. And I think that we can take on so much and do it with such grace that we need to recognize our own power and ability and applaud ourselves a lot more than we do, rather than cutting ourselves down and looking in the mirror and saying that we don't look right and we're not perfect. And I know I do that all the time, and it's just a fruitless endeavor. So I think that, because with that comes an internal confidence, and also letting go frankly, of some of the things. I think also, at least for me as a woman, I held on to so many little things. I would worry about such little things. I would like elevate little issues, and that just annoys the bosses. Because like they don't change half the stuff anyways, so why are you complaining? Go up with the big stuff and let some things go. You know the movie Office Space? You know when he starts caring less about work? Like all of a sudden he's the hot ticket? There's a little bit of truth in that if you just relax a little bit and sort of center yourself and find a little bit more of your like mojo, which can be hard, I do think that people read you a little bit differently. At least that has been my experience. So like it took me a long time to get there, and I'm not even there yet. But I do think if you know, I think women can often be the ones who clean up the mess, literally and figuratively, and say yes to all the holidays, and yes to all the extra hours, and yes to doing all the other office stuff too, by the way, on top of being a doctor. And I just think like you might find it convenient to say no a little bit more and take a little more time to yourself, and like it certainly helped fulfill me and help my voice be heard a little more. Does that answer your question? I'm not sure if it does. Okay. Anything else? Yeah.
Hi.
Hi.
First, thank you so much for being here.
My pleasure.
I find you so inspiring, and I know I speak for many of us. It's a different field from what we're used to, but your entrepreneurship and your brilliance speaks with all that
nice.
you've
Thank
accomplished. But so not being from a journalistic background, one, I'm curious, how do you prepare for these interviews? Like what kind of steps do you go through to do that? And number two, kind of, how do you think you've created your wow factor? For example, why does someone want to interview with you as opposed to somebody else? And how do you cultivate that, but yet stay humble enough to not let that take you into a spot that would change your career path?
I don't think I have a wow factor, but thank you, because I'm going to work on it now. No, I really don't. But I will tell you, I'll answer both questions. So first, thank you for saying that. That's very nice. I am far from brilliant, but I appreciate that I have given you that belief. I think I'm good at my job. I think I can always be better. But thank you. I over prepare. So I believe that being armed with the facts is your best weapon. And it really helped me when I was 22 and blonde and had a weird name and no one knew me. And people would come in for interviews. Frankly, my husband would say they think you're totally unprepared. And he'd be like, just bulldoze them with the facts. And I did. And I like, it was such a great lesson he taught me. So I read so much for these interviews. So I just had the president of Microsoft, really interesting guy, Brad Smith. He's from Appleton, Wisconsin. Really fascinating. It'll publish in a few weeks, but I interviewed him a few days ago for the podcast, and I read his entire book. And I know it's like, oh, of course you're going to read the book of someone you interview. I promise you, you can't read the books of every single person you have on the show, but if I'm going to spend an hour with someone, I'm going to read their book if they're coming on to talk about that. And that makes a world of difference, because I think it's respect. You're showing someone that you respect them enough to read what they've done and read about them and do the research on them for them to spend an hour of their time with you. Or really more than that. If they're spending an hour with you, they've probably spent an hour getting to where you are and an hour getting home, right? So, I believe in over-preparing. Now, I think you can do it too much to your detriment, because sometimes you're so focused on what's the next question I'm going to ask rather than just listening to what they say in a natural follow-up, but I'm learning on that front. So that's it. It's just like a ton of research and preparing, which my producers pull amazing research for me and lots of articles, and I read and I listen all the time. Like when I'm running with the kids or the stroller to the grocery store, I listen to podcasts and interviews with people, because it helps me anticipate how they're going to answer the question and what I might want to ask as a follow-up. And then how do I get people to talk to me? I'm very straightforward with people. We never share questions. It's CNN's policy, but I will be honest about the topic. So let's say there's a company in crisis. Like I recently interviewed the Google CEO, and they have a lot going on, a lot of questions about YouTube and what's being posted on YouTube, et cetera. And I would never go into an interview with like that, you know, saying, well, I just want to talk about all the great jobs you create. I'm very honest about, like, these are the focus areas that I want to talk about, and there will be hard questions. So if you don't want to talk about that, then I'm not the person you should do the interview with. I turned down a huge interview last year because the person didn't want to talk about a really important issue. It was someone in the government. And I just said, well, no, we don't make agreements. We don't ever make agreements. So I think just being candid and genuine with people, and don't mislead them. Don't tell them you're going to put the whole thing on the podcast and then just air 1 minute, right? So I don't know. It kind of comes from Minnesota, frankly. Like the Midwest, like, you know, being frank with people and like doing what you say you're going to do. But I'm going to work on the wow.
Questions?
Okay.
What type of analytics do you use for your podcasts?
Not good enough. Honestly, that is the one thing that I wish I knew more of, is how well it does, or not well. And we look at some of the numbers, but they're just, I don't know if it's the system we have or what, but I can't really get a great read other than like monthly listeners. I can't figure out how long people listen through. On TV, you know when someone turns it off. So to be continued.
Poppy, I've watched you on television. Thank you for making the time to be here with us.
What's your name?
Oh, my name is Dr. Wayne Stevens. I'm from Florida, and I'm supporting one of the Hobbs honorees here, Dr. Deborah George.
Oh, great. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you, too. It's been said that the media has changed, you know, at a tremendous clip. And, you know, in the last 20 or so years, with the advent of the internet, you know, your job, the role of media, or maybe not the role, but certainly the way people consume media has changed dramatically. And I'm just wondering, how have you, you know, as a professional, kind of, you know, rode that change? How have you stayed relevant? And what do you think you may relate to us? Because, you know, our field hasn't changed as rapidly, but certainly the whole society is in change. And so, you know, I think there may be some interesting lessons from that.
So can I flip the script and ask you 2 questions?
Sure.
Do you watch television news?
I do.
You do? Only from, you're on Florida, so you're East Coast. 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. every Monday through Friday, right? That's when I'm on. I'm kidding. No, but really, okay, because a lot, I mean, I don't watch television news, and I work in television.
There's news in our officery, so there's.
Okay, there you go, so you have it on. So you consume, how do you get most of your news? Is it Twitter, newspapers, online on your computer, or listening to the TV? Or the radio in the car?
Probably online for me.
Online.
Like on the phone.
Okay, yeah, and on the phone. And then, do you have appointment television every week? Is there one thing that you watch every week? Like one news program, 60 Minutes or?
No, none.
Okay. So I think that what has changed is that people can get it in every way. So you probably get more of your news from CNN.com than you do from CNN television, maybe, right? And so our challenge is to, on television every day, how do we make the experience unique for you? And how do we make it different from what you could get on Twitter? And how do we make it different from an article you could read? And I think right now the most important thing is that what we can do is we can fact check in real time. So when the president walks out like he did yesterday during our show and has an impromptu, you know, gaggle with reporters and says things, and some of them they just weren't true. I mean, there were no alternative facts. There were just statements that were not true. We could correct them in real time. So I think that the role of journalism in having to correct disinformation from a number of places has really, really changed. I also think it's a unique challenge because we're not the only person who can give it to you anymore, right? You can get it online, you can get it on Twitter, so we have a real responsibility to do unique long-form reporting. So what has brought me a lot of joy in my career, to get back to your question, is doing long pieces, like getting to do this 90-minute documentary on Amazon, or getting to do, we did a 13-minute piece across Ohio on opioid addicts and parents who had lost their children from opioid overdoses. And 13 minutes in TV time is like a lifetime. You know, most pieces are like 2 minutes. So I think that we have a real responsibility to keep getting out across the country and doing those long form pieces, because that is not the same as something that you could read on Twitter in 140 characters. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Good.
So do you ever consider that TV news could decrease the way newspaper has, and how TV took over newspaper readers, and now internet is taking over maybe
I think if you
TV
don't
viewers?
think like that, you're missing the future. But I don't think TV news goes away at all because of what I just said. There's no other medium that can fact check in real time, and there's no other medium that can bring you breaking news as it is happening the same way. What do you turn on, you know, when an attack happens like happened in Paris or 9/11 in New York? I was a freshman, I was in New York for 5 days and 9/11 happened. Who do you trust? What do you turn on, right? And that is something that I think we will
Always have.
we will always be there
Right.
for that, yeah.
Yes.
These are the best questions. Hi.
No, I'd like to know, my name's Kay.
Hey, Kay.
I'd like to know who exactly, like if you, I know I have a wish list of people that I would love to talk to. If I said, who is your wish list that you've never been able to get on, but you really want to get on, and whether it's good, bad, or indifferent, like maybe you don't agree with what they're saying out there, but you really want to get them on so you can talk about it, who'd be your top pick?
Oh, the Pope would be great.
Really?
Yeah, I think so, because I think he's fascinating. I mean, you know, look at what the Catholic Church has gone through this period, right? And then look at, you know, some of the things he has said about tolerance and equality, and I would just like to go deep with the Pope on that. Don't hold your breath.
Yeah, I don't know what happened, but yeah.
Don't hold your breath, but that would be one.
I thought you were going to say Donald Trump, so.
Donald Trump.
I'll take that too. I would love that. Yes, I would love to have that. We welcome him every day.
One more question?
I did interview him, by the way, like 10 years ago. Yeah, when he was a businessman. What? I went to Trump Tower. I did the interview there. I was very young. It was a long time ago. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Mariah.
Hi.
I'd love to know what motivates you and how often you have to remind yourself about that motivation.
Yeah, that's a good question, right? Because it can get like,
Yeah, it can get.
why am I doing all this again? I believe that journalists serve a pretty important function for the republic right now, for democracy right now. So right now, that motivates me a lot, just facts. I know it sounds simplistic. I also find what really motivates me, again, is just the people's stories. This is like outside of politics, right? Whether it's, you know, the parents in Ohio that I sat with who lost their 20-year-old son who was a star baseball player, and they had no idea he was addicted to opioids, and then he collapsed and died at his friend's house one day. And their lives are, you know, shattered. Or the family that I was with in Paris. To me, those are people who would not have an audience if we didn't give them one, right? They're the voice, you know, to be the voice of the voiceless. When not so far from here, and not so far from where I grew up in Minnesota, in Flint, Michigan, in the middle of their crisis with lead in the water, and all of these kids, by the way, are still living and will live for the rest of their lives with lead poisoning, which has affected their mental development and will forever, because in part of an abdication of responsibility by the government. I was going to interview the governor, Rick Snyder, very grateful that he, gave me candid answers, gave me his time. But I was nervous going into the interview because I felt like I don't know what it's like to live through what these people have lived through. So before the interview, I was very pregnant at the time, and I couldn't drink I didn't want to eat anything at the restaurants. I couldn't drink the water. I was very nervous. But I spent time just walking with my producer around the town and talking to moms and dads, like, hey, if you were interviewing the governor, what would you ask him? And then I just asked him what they said. And it was like, that's my job, actually, is to just actually get answers for people that will never be able to sit down with these lawmakers. So I'm not always motivated, and every day is not perfect at all, but it's those moments where I do feel like we have a pretty big responsibility, just like all of you do every day with your patients in your hands and your care, to get those questions answered. That's it.
Well, with that, I just want to say thank you to both of you for being here, taking the time out of your busy schedules and lives and away from your children, and spending the last hour and a half with us. Thank you so much.
And I just wanted to thank Poppy really quick. For those of you that know me well, you may know that Poppy is married to my brother. So this
Did
wonderful
you know that?
guy
Breaking
that she's
news.
talking about is actually my brother, who is
Who knew that?
complete.
Did anyone know that?
He is the complete opposite of me and Poppy. He is like easygoing, he's like chill, like nothing phases him. And I've known her for a very long time because they started dating when they were both in college. And we were always, we shared a couple of things, like we were always career women.
Always.
We loved a good Sauvignon Blanc.
We still do, but
we still do, but we've been pregnant a lot lately, so it's been less often. But
not right now.
No.
Or
not
a
right
Vlad, do you have?
No.
Tell me. Okay.
But it's been it's really been amazing because we're in this women in dentistry thing, and when I was talking to the Lucy Hobbs organizers, who by the way are amazing people. They were kind of talking about the type of people they wanted and who and where, and I didn't say anything for a long time because names were being thrown around and if we could get them, and it was kind of like, well, we could never get her, and I was like, oh, okay. I don't know if the word is use Poppy, for my gain, so I never asked her to do anything.
Ever,
all these years. So I finally said to her, I know it's like you have a lot going on, and I know it's just like a small conference, but maybe I'll take you to a really nice dinner on Saturday night, and I'll try to get a Linea or something, and I did, which I didn't get, by the way, but a Linea, like the best restaurant in the city, but don't get excited because we're not going there. And, I was like, maybe if, she's like, yeah.
I'm in.
I'm like, are you sure? She's like, unless there's breaking news, I'm gonna be there. And I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe it. So of course I tell the organizers and they're like, oh my God, this is such a big deal. So I'm so grateful, one, that you appreciate my passion because we've kind of been passionate together all these years.
We are
living parallel lives. We have kids pretty much the same age. Mm-hmm. We spend a lot of holidays together, and it's been really amazing to have another female that we have in this room, but I'm kind of been with one for a long time, so it's been really humbling, and she's the most humble person ever. When she says I'm not wow, she just doesn't think that about her.
But I'm gonna figure out my wow.
And that's really amazing. And I know we've talked about Minnesota a lot, but we grew up in a really nice, humble environment.
Yeah.
And I think when you have good people who keep you on the ground, you can be more and more and not realize it. And it's okay to be a big deal and not know it.
Yeah, it's actually better.
Yeah. So anyway, thank you guys for staying.
Thank you for coming. But don't clap yet, because I want to say a little bit about Vla. I don't know how many of you here know her, but I think the reason that my automatic answer was yes was because it's Vla. And I never had a sister. I have a brother. And so for me, she's always been my sister. And you're a few months older than me, so she's my older sister. And I have always admired her. I don't tell you this ever, but admired her and looked up to her so much because of the grace with which she conducts herself.
Thank you.
She is the most even keel mother, doctor, spouse, You call her, she's got like 2 screaming kids in the back. She's just done like, I don't know how many surgeries. She's like making dinner, taking some kid here, being a single parent if Ellie's working or vice versa. And it's just like, it never seems to get to you. So the way you handle things with grace, I admire. I don't always. You should have seen me an hour ago trying to get here. But I just think it's something that we can all learn from and appreciate people around us and look to those and say, how do I want? Like, how can I become the best part of myself by learning from others? So that's what you have been. And it's been really nice to be able, and I think part of the reason why my marriage works, frankly, and on a serious note, is because my husband grew up with you. And he learned to admire an ambitious woman. And so I don't threaten him. And that is because of you. So thanks, Vla.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.